All right, we'll call to the order the joint budget workshop of the City Council and Lake Forest Housing Authority Board here on May 10th, 2016. See, everyone is present. So I guess we'll go to the public session. Which is the Pledge of Allegiance. Councilman Gardner.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
This time we'll go to public comments. If you want to speak on an agenda, on an item that's not on the agenda, if you can fill out a little form. There's a red light that comes on when you're done, and a yellow light if you have a minute left. Do we have any speakers?
We have none for non-agendized items. I have one speaker for the budget workshop.
Okay. I guess that leads us to agenda item 1.
Agenda item 1, fiscal year 2016-17 budget workshop, submitted by Deputy City Manager, Director of Finance.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council. This evening, the staff is presenting for your review the proposed budget for fiscal year 2016-17. I'm not going to steal Mr. Neves' thunder this year. I keep saying that every year, and then I do it, and then I feel bad about it, but now I'm not going to. So I just want to fundamentally say that what we're seeing in Lake Forest is, I think, a great indication of things that have been put into place for a long time that are coming to fruition, an improving economy. And I think that's demonstrated both by those elements, one being the activities and the development that's going on in our community, and the increasing budget the economy is demonstrated by increases in our revenue, and what we're now seeing as budget surpluses. Lake Forest has traditionally always had that, but even more so now, and projected to be that way for some time. So I think the staff has worked hard at trying to present a conservative but nevertheless a budget that will provide the types of services that the community has identified that it would like to see, that the council in the past has identified, what the staff has considered to be an appropriate investment this year, while watching our revenue strengthen, making conservative investments where appropriate. So with that very brief introduction, I'm going to turn it over to Keith. What we'll do tonight is have his presentation, and if then I guess there's one public comment speaker, do that, Mr. Mayor, and then turn it back to the council for any questions, suggestions, comments. The staff's here today to listen to what the council would like to provide as some directions so that we can finalize this budget and bring it back to you at the second meeting of June. So with that, Mr. Neves.
And before you go, I just was going to say that we have Mr. Scott Smith here. So he's on a return tour, so welcome.
Thanks a lot. It's great to be here.
I don't see anybody else on a return tour, so okay, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. Mayor, members of the City Council, as Bob Dunnick said, tonight we're going to present you the fiscal year 2016-17 proposed budget. We'll walk through some of the 15-16 accomplishments, some of the 16-17 initiatives. We'll walk through a lot of numbers because it's a budget, so we're going to look at a lot of numbers tonight. So we'll get going. Really, three things we'll walk through tonight is we'll walk through the proposed city operating budget for 2016-17. Then we'll move forward to the proposed housing authority budget for 2016-17, and then every other year we do a capital improvement projects budget. And last year we adopted the 2-year CIP budget, but we'll just review what's in the second year of the CIP budget. for this year, what's coming in it. And we'll go from there. Fiscal year 2015-16 in review, City Council approved contracts for the design and construction management teams for the Lake Forest Civic Center. Both Deborah and Hannah are the leads on that, and the Civic Center seems to be moving along just fine. Progress in Lake Forest new neighborhoods continues to transform the community. Roughly 1,750 permits have been pulled so far. Shea Baker, Portola Hills, Parkside, lots of communities coming into Lake Forest. We completed a significant upgrade to the Intergov Planning, Permitting, and Code Enforcement Program, winning the 2016 Tyler Excellent Award. Police Services continues with its highly successful child safety and emergency preparedness programs. The community has been tremendously involved in those, and they've been full each time the police department has put them on. The council initiated a CTAG, which completed a review of traffic and transportation-related issues and compiled a list for future city council considerations. That'll be coming to you in a staff report in June. The city held its 5th Shop and Dine Lake Forest Week. It was a 45% increase in revenue, the biggest Shop and Dine Lake Forest week so far. We're looking forward to the next one in 2016. A big increase in participation in community services activities by 20%. Most of that was because of the sports park and the activities going on there at the sports park. And the City Council approved conceptual design for a Portola Park that included a dog park, pickleball courts, and other great amenities. So looking forward to 2016-2017 proposed budget. We look at completion of the design process, resulting in construction documents for the Lake Forest Civic Center and Senior Center. We're moving along with that. We think by the end of 2016-17, we'll be taking to the City Council construction documents for the Civic Center. Public Works continues to work on traffic mitigation with the Lifton projects. There's continued progress in the development of new master plan communities. I just mentioned Baker Ranch, Portola Hills, and Parkside. Many permits, like I said, over 1,700 permits pulled so far. Roughly 4,500 permits total are going to be pulled. The city continues the strong commitment to the engagement by sponsoring the 2016 Biannual Resident and Business Survey. This is a survey that the city puts on every other year, and in 2016 we will initiate that survey again. We're going to complete the final design and begin construction on Portola, the new Portola Hills Park up there in the Portola Hills development, and hopefully start on construction on the Village Pond Park. We will hold the 25th anniversary celebrations to include sports park tournaments and a family carnival this year. In 2016-2017, we've already kind of initiated some events in this current fiscal year 15-16, but we'll have the bigger event in 2016-2017. We're also going to initiate Phase 2 of the Neighborhood Park Improvement Program. That is to renovate 10 parks, the remaining parks that weren't renovated in Phase 1. Community Services is working on that project currently, going out to RFP. We'll continue to attract new businesses through seminars, communications, outreach, and networking. That's just a little of the initiatives for 2016-2017. If you look in the budget document, under each department, you can read through each department's initiatives and goals for 2016-2017, and you can see the accomplishments that were accomplished in 2015-2016. Now, moving on to the numbers, our general fund is really healthy. Like Bob said, revenue is starting to come in from the development, property taxes, sales tax, TOT, all of them are moving up at a much faster pace. The economy has improved, so our budget is balanced. If you look here at the top of the chart, beginning balance, we're going to start with $17.9 million in the bank in the general fund. Revenues coming in will be $44.2 million. Expenditures, $42.8 million. You're looking at a $1.4 million surplus for the City of Lake Forest in fiscal year 2016-2017. We have a small transfer out that will, per the policy for the reserves, and then the ending balance, you're roughly $19.2 million unrestricted funds in the general fund. Now, we always like you to see the base revenues when we take out the OSA revenues coming in, the one-time revenues, and the one-time expenditures. Because that's going to be the true base moving forward. In 3 to 5 years, when the development's over with and everybody's gone, we're going to have to go back to a base that's, we're not bringing in as much permitting revenue, development revenue, and then the expenditures on the other side on contracts helping us get through this. So, your revenues are $44.2 million. We see less one-time revenues of roughly $3 million, with a total base revenue of $41.2 million. On the expenditure side, less one-time expenditures of $4.1 million, to total base expenditures of $38.7 million. So when we take out the one-time revenues and the one-time expenditures, you actually increase your surplus up to $2.5 million. This next slide, I've kind of broken out, showing you where the one-time revenues and the one-time expenditures are coming from. Development related on the revenue side, it's almost $3 million in revenues coming from OSA. On the expenditure side, it's only about $2.3 million in expenditures on the OSA, and there's $1.8 million of one-time expenditures in departmental budgets this year. And the next couple slides, I will walk through and show you what department they're in and what they are. So, starting with the city clerk, there's a record system she's going to implement in 2016-2017, and there's a little more money initiated with this, but there's about $2,200 of one-time money that will be taken out in the next fiscal year. Also in the city clerk, the elections, there's $60,000 we budget every other year for the elections. So that money comes in 1 year, goes out 1 year, comes in out 1 year, goes out 1 year. In economic development, every couple of years they update the marketing video for the businesses. That's $30,000. So every 2 to 3 years you'll see roughly $30,000 put back in to upgrade and improve the marketing video for the businesses. In finance, after 24 years, we're going to look to get a new finance system. We've had the same finance system in the city since incorporation. I think it's time to modernize and improve that. Maybe we can show you some prettier graphs and some prettier charts with a new finance system. But that is the start of trying to implement a new finance system and be more friendly to the departments and to the other systems we're running in the city. Development services. We've got one-time $500,000 to start general plan. That is just a 1/3 of what we think it'll take to finish and go through a total general plan of about $1.5 million. So there's $500,000 in this year's development services budget. Public Works is a work order system, helping them track and maintain all the work orders from all the vendors out there, all the street maintenance vendors, all the park vendors, Spectrum, Marina, Nieves, all those vendors who are giving them work orders for 4 sprinklers here, a sprinkler there, a broken pipe here. It's a way to track them, help them keep hold of the cost on those. Of course, in management services, the biannual survey, that's money that comes in. It'll be budgeted for 2016, 2017, and then we'll take it out every other year biannually. Also, some more security software for our IT system throughout the city of Lake Forest, trying to keep that secure from all the viruses that are happening through either emails or the website or anything. That's one-time money that IT is going to implement some stuff next year, and then it'll be out the following year. Of course, next slide, community services, the 25th anniversary. That's one-time money. We won't budget again for 17-18. And then in police services, the new generation 800 megahertz, That $312,000, $262,000 is for the remaining radios. Motorola gave us a deal last year on the Hot Reds. They gave us 50% off if we bought them before December 31st. Motorola has come back and told the cities if they purchase before December 31st, they're going to give us 40% off. So we're purchasing the radios in 2016, 2017. We'll get a big discount. And the remaining of that money is some more backbone we owe for the new generation 800 megahertz system that's going. And then, of course, police services, animal control, that's just kind of a number we plugged in there for the shelter for the County of Orange. And then also, while we're on police services, it's not one-time money, but the police services budget is going up this year by about not the police services budget, the police services contract. These are two one-time costs in the whole police services division, but the police services contract is going up by 2.71%, or about around $385,000. And over time, I think when we gave you a report on police services, I might let Carlo mention that's lower than the average over the 24-plus years we've been with the Orange County Sheriff's Department.
Yes. Good evening, Mayor and members of the council. To Keith's point, the current contract number that we have for the Orange County Sheriff's Department is about 2.7%, which is less than the adjusted for inflation average over the 23 fiscal years that we previously discussed with you. That number was about 4.2%.
Thank you, Carlo. So that gives you a total of about $1,774,000 of one-time money within their respective departments in the general fund, and that will be put in this year, come out next year. So if we're looking at general fund expenditures, expenditures are $42.8 million, like I mentioned. An increase of $2.7 million, or 6.6%. That includes all the OSA one-time revenue and the department one-time revenue. If you take out the department one-time revenue, the increase is actually only around $900,000, or 2.3%. I'm not taking out the OSA revenue because I expect that to be going forward for the next 3 to 5 years. So it is one time, and it's going to stop, but it's over a period of time. The one-time revenue in the departments will just come in and then go out. Next slide. General fund expenditures by departments. This is just a graph to show you the two departments. Police services and public works are your biggest departments in the city at 38%, 24%. Community services, development services are your next in line, about 8%. Finance has 8%, and then you just go down the line from there. Just kind of a pretty graph that the new finance system will do much better at than I will in Excel. Now we'll go to the revenue side. Overall revenues around $44.2 million. Some of the biggest increases is property taxes, both your secured and your motor vehicle in lieu, which we get paid through property taxes, is your biggest generator of that 6.4%. You do get some other little tax, your unsecured, your supplementals, but really what's driving our property taxes is our secured property taxes, and that is from the new homes coming in, and it's also from a tremendous amount of homes in Lake Forest are being sold and turned over, so the value of them are going up. Our median value is rising, and we've almost recaptured all the Prop 8 that was reduced during the recession. Our consultant, HDL, thinks by the end of next year we would have recaptured all the loss. So we're back to where we were in 07, 08, 08, 09. Sales tax, we've just been conservative at a 2%. It's probably going to come in more than that. We're actually working off a new base on sales tax because the triple flip, the governor paid him off the bonds this year, and we get our full 1%, and it happened only three-quarters of the way through the year, and so we're kind of setting a new base for that 3%. Plus, we're getting, as you remember, last year's budget, we have almost $928,000 of one-time revenue coming in for the true-up on all this. So we're going to really have to, we're doing a conservative estimate about 2%, and then we'll come back at mid-year, and we'll really look to where it's at. It's going to be more than 2%, but I need to see how much that one-time revenue's coming in for this year and see how the 1% starts hitting the ledgers each month as it come in. Of course, our hotels are doing great, like always. TOT is up almost 7.1%. This has probably been the average for the last 3 years going up. So hotels in the city are doing very well. All other taxes, this is franchise fees and property transfer tax, up almost 8%. Franchise fees, they're rising because of the new homes coming in, cable, franchise fee, trash, all the different utilities, SCE, gas, they all pay a franchise fees. Those are all rising. Plus the property transfer tax. That's a tax is when a house is sold, there's a tax on that, and we get a certain percentage back to the city of Lake Forest. That's what's driving that 8% too. A lot of homes being sold in Lake Forest. A lot of new homes being sold from the developers to new home buyers, and a lot of just regular homes being sold. Okay. General fund revenues. Revenues are $44.2 million, increase of $3.2 million, or 7.8%. Probably our biggest increase in revenues in the last 3 years. It's really the property tax, the TOT, and the all other tax that's driving that. All those taxes together make up $37 million of your $44 million budget. Of course, Lake Forest always has nice reserves, starting with $21.5 million, and that it's $100,000 or $126,000 will be transferred over. That is the increase in revenue from mid-year. Mid-year revenues really increased, so that's the only increase. Because we increased this transfer at mid-year too, so we go off the base of at mid-year when we increased it, so it's only increasing $100,000 more, up to $21.6 million. That is per the reserve policy. It's 40% of your general fund total revenue. So 40% of the $44.2 million. Now, there is two other things in this, $21.5 million. There are some PEG funds that we will use, $950,000 that we will use for the Civic Center. That can be used for the transmission of public education and government. So it could help us buy the IT equipment and the cameras and everything else for the new Civic Center. And then we also have a little side emergency fund of $3 million for any emergency that happened in the city. That's included in the 21.6. And of course, the only transfer out is that $100,000 this year. If you remember, in the 15-16 budget, we transferred out almost $7.4 million to the Capital Improvement Fund. We do a look back every 2 years, so next year in the 17-18 budget, we'll do a look back, and any surplus in the general fund, we will transfer over to the CIP fund. General fund summary. Next slide, please. So the general fund summary, the proposed general fund budget for fiscal year 16-17 is balanced. The city is in great financial shape. We've got fully funded reserves. We've got almost $19.1 million in unrestricted funds in the general fund. And we're coming with a surplus of about around $1.4 million. This is projected to remain balanced for the next 5 years. I've updated the 5-year projection just for the general fund, not for the whole city. We move to the next slide. And I don't know how tiny that is. That is your revenues over operating expenses for the next 5 years.
So you're saying at least the next 5 years, really?
Well, I've only projected through the
Yeah,
next
because
5.
you've only done 5, yeah.
I've only done 5. If you kind of look, in fiscal year 16-17, the lines, that's that $1.4 million surplus. If you look in fiscal year 17-18, you notice those lines grow apart. That is that one-time departmental revenue of $1.7 million coming out. So, of course, those lines would grow apart. And then if you look in 18-19, they're shrinking back together. That is caused by a couple things in the projections. We're projecting the Civic Center to be getting close to being open, so there's additional services and operating costs and personnel costs coming online for the new Civic Center. And then I've also budgeted some new personnel costs for the Orange County Sheriff's Department's contract coming online, knowing that there's more homes in more neighborhoods. But as you see that we are still have a surplus, not quite as big as the prior 2 years, but there still is a surplus even with those coming online. And of course, 19 and 20 and 2021, the revenue continue to grow, and the expenditures at 2021, you don't see it in this chart, but we start coming back together a little bit. The surplus isn't this big. But these are only projections, one turn in the economy in 18-19 or 17-18, and these projections we can throw out the door and we can start all over again. So that's all it takes, is a little turn in the economy, and we would have to readjust these projections. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind that your surpluses moving forward through 16-17 and 17-18, you're going to need some of those surpluses to be able to fund those positions and additional help in 18-19 when the Civic Center comes on board. So now we're going to look at all funds together with capital, even though we don't adopt a capital budget. So the beginning balance is $94 million, with revenues coming in of $64.9. Expenditures of operating 46.3, and then capital projects 5.9, for a total of 52.2. And then revenues less expenditures on the entire budget, you're adding $12.7 million. Most of that is the impact fees coming from the OSA that will eventually pay for the Civic Center. With your ending balance at $106.7 million. Another thing, most of those funds that are coming in are restricted funds, either per special revenue funds or per developer agreements with the developers. The general fund is the only unrestricted fund. All the other funds have restrictions on them. This is just another pie chart showing you a summary of revenues, all funds, where it's coming from. Of course, like I've said, property taxes, sales taxes is your biggest income generator in the city. Then, of course, licenses and permits, fines and forfeitures from other governments, just, all the rest that come in. You'll see that in the detail in the budget. And then you see the summary of operations, expenditures by category. Contractual services, we are a full contract city. That should be the biggest part of the pie every year. So it's 63%, up from 60% prior year. Most of that change is really contracts dealing with the OSA. Personnel at 19%, that stayed steady, same as last year, 19%. Capital outlay, 0.4. And then operations and maintenance is down a little bit, about 2% from prior year. Now, that's the end of the operating budget of the city. We'll move forward now with the Housing Authority operating budget. So your beginning balance is, the Housing Authority is a standalone budget, and it really has no revenue sources. The revenue coming in for this is really some HOA fees from the Madrid condos, and then they pay, we pay them back. The only fees that would support the Housing Authority is us transferring in. Where this fund balance came from is the transfer in of impact fees, affordable housing impact fees from the developers. So you look at beginning balances around $314,000, revenues $11,800, expenditures, $69,700. You're spending $58,000 this year. I mean, the difference between revenues and expenditures is around $58,000. You're going to end with about $256,000. The biggest expenditure is for a consultant to help us put together the plan to go forward with all the affordable housing impact fees. And then, of course, the capital improvement projects budget, 2015, 2017. City Council approved that last June, a 2-year budget, so they approved both 2 years. This is just a kind of a reminder of what's in it. Total expenditures of about $14.7 million. In the 15-16 budget, we have $8.9 million budgeted, and in the 16-17 budget, there's going to be $5.8 million budget, for a total of $14.7 million. We will bring back, like we do a midterm operating budget, we're going to do a midterm CIP review. This will be in July 2016. So we will, this is halfway through the 2015-2017 CIP budget. So we will review the entire thing, and any additions or subtractions will happen at that meeting. That is it for the PowerPoint presentation on the 2016-2017 proposed operating budget and the 2016-2017 proposed Housing Authority budget. What the staff usually does is I'll turn it back over to Bob, and then Bob will turn it over to the council, and then we can walk through the budget with any questions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Keith. Mr. Mayor, members of the council, the staff doesn't have any addition to add at this juncture. It would be the pleasure, Mr. Mayor, of the chair, to either go to public comments or then start having dialogue with your colleagues.
Yeah, let's go to public comments.
April Josephson.
Welcome.
Thank you, Honorable Mayor and members of Lake Forest City Council. I submitted a written request from the Pet Adoption Center of Orange County for $15,000, which would allow us to secure a location in Lake Forest in a retail center that we've already been talking with the broker, and I've confirmed with the Planning Department that the zoning is appropriate. And I don't want to reiterate everything that I've written in the letter since you can read it, but I do want to point out that we have been talking, and this request is late because obviously the animal care discussion has gone on and until very recently. But we would like to eventually completely move our adoption center from Laguna Hills to Lake Forest. We feel that Lake Forest is the most appropriate place for it and would benefit. The community is engaged. I would say more of our volunteers are from Lake Forest than anywhere. I can't even think of one that we have from Laguna Hills. So I really feel that it's, for a lot of reasons, it's the appropriate place to do this. We can provide you a lot of benefit. The center that we'd be going into has 7 vacancies. It's the Lake Forest Village Center. They're definitely willing. There would be appropriate places to walk the animals. Almost everything that we plan to do can be done from day one, other than housing the animals overnight. But we can assist with adoptions. We can divert animals from the shelter, which is very important because I think that will reduce your billings from the county. I can't do anything about the $600,000 for building the new shelter, but we can help you from the day we come in. Anyway, we think there's a lot of economic development benefits as well because we would be filling a retail empty space. We will work with the Chamber of Commerce and other local businesses. We'll bring business to that center. We will refer people out to local businesses, and we can do everything that we've talked about all along as far as being an adoption center by being in this location and working with our community. And potentially also, we've proposed, if you're interested in doing quarterly events in different parks, I know I've gone to several at Pittsford Park and And we're still doing the South County Pet Expo because that's Supervisor Bartlett's event, but we could do 3 other quarterly events throughout town with the funds. Anyway, thank you very much for your time, and I'm open to any questions and further discussion. Okay. Thank you.
You know, I have a quick question.
Okay.
So I'm not sure if it says, or if you said it, if I've missed it, I apologize. Was it a annual funding that you're
I'm requesting right now
or a one-time?
Right now, I'm requesting $15,000 so that we can get started. We would need probably half up front to secure the location and get started. And then from there, we can do the rest in quarterly increments for the rest of that. And I think as we go along, we will determine whether we need additional funds, how much we're saving the city, how much we're improving, you know, what our benefits are to the city, what economic results you're getting as far as revenues, you know, cost reductions, revenue increases, things like that. So right now, I'm asking for $15,000 for this year. I wouldn't ask for beyond this year because you guys need to see results.
Okay, great, thank you.
There have been no further requests.
All right, well, I guess we'll bring it back to the council. I see a light coming on.
First of all, Mr. Neves, just thank you very much for the presentation, and very excited to see that, you know, once again, we have a balanced budget with significant reserves. You look at total funds, and I'm guessing this $106.7 million is going to be the largest amount we've ever had in the city's bank account, if not very close. So, but
Yeah, I think we hit $100 million right when I got here, just a little bit over $100 million, but I think this will be our record. But you got to remember, $60 million is for the Civic Center.
absolutely, absolutely, and that's what we've been talking about quite a bit. Is that, you know, that gives us the opportunity to this is giving us the opportunity to essentially cash flow that particular infrastructure development, which the community has been asking for a long time. Is going to serve a variety of needs. But I just want to say thank you very much for the entire budget. I mean, I think that you guys did a fantastic job. It's very easy for me to read and understand. I always have lots of questions, and even with my own CFO, you know, they put together reports for me, and every month I seem to have questions that they answered the month prior. So it's, but they answered the same type of question, but I just have it again. So we spent about an hour on the phone today, and by my count, we went over about 48 questions. So I think I've got everything answered. But, you know, again, I just want to let you know that how much I appreciate what you've done. I want to show my appreciation for each one of the department heads. I think each one of you are doing exactly what we're asking for, which is trying to be a fiscally responsible city, fiscally responsible department, and make sure that we can accomplish all the things that the residents of Lake Forest are asking for us within reason. There are some individual requests that people have that, you know, we can never accomplish, but you know, I think the vast majority of residents are very pleased with what's going on. I'm very excited to hear that we're doing the survey again this year, and looking forward to the results from that. I know that tends to be a driving document for us, and just want to encourage each one of the department heads again to continue with this fiscally conservative path, and at the same time, let's study that survey in detail and look where we might be missing the mark slightly, but I doubt that it's going to be anything significant if it's like the survey results that I've seen in the past. So again, thank you very much, and I don't have any questions. That was just my commentary.
Yes, I'd like to reiterate, thank you. You did a great job. Obviously, the fact that we're such a healthy city doesn't belabor us as council members, but former councils too, because the fact is we came in with a healthy city, and I think that we've been doing a good job in keeping steadfast in the tradition of Lake Forest. Revenue's up, occupancy is up 7.1%. Is that up a lot more than what it was prior to the sports park opening? Because obviously our tournaments that are playing, whether it be softball tournaments, soccer tournaments and stuff, what was last year's?
I'd have to go I'd have to calculate the percentage from last year to the prior fiscal year, but when I looked at them, we're going up about the same percentage each year for the last 3 years.
Okay.
So I don't know how much of the sports park is generating some of that, and how much of it is just the overall economy that's doing really well.
And so in the reserves for the general fund, we have 21.6 in the general fund reserves.
For the reserves in the general fund, yes, we have 21.6 million.
Okay, and then explain to me the other taxes again. Once again, you went through them quickly.
Other taxes are
that-
franchise fees,
That's up 0.7 or 8%.
8%, and property transfer tax,
So sales of home.
sales of homes.
And then of the permits that are coming forth this year, 1,750 permits with a grand total, when completed, 4,500. So that means that we have 2,750 permits still to be pulled?
Yes, the difference between 4,500 and the 1,750.
Thank you. Great job. I want to commend our staff on you guys did a wonderful job, and I'm very proud of you guys.
I have a general comment before we go into questions. I agree with my colleagues. It's a lot of work, a lot of information. Thank you. On the other hand, I didn't find it very useful. And although there's a lot of information there, and let me give you some ways in which I would have found it more useful. And when I was reading the budget, at the time I started reading the budget and listening to CNBC, there was a report on McDonald's earnings, and they were going through McDonald's being the fast food store, and they were going through their segments. The breakfast every day was accounting for this kind of profitability, the snacks, the salad, et cetera, et cetera. And while I'm listening to that and I'm looking at the budget, suddenly that tweaked me. Can I get that kind of information in here? In other words, can I see how well our senior program, how much, I'm going to use the seniors a lot, because right after that I got a call from Marilyn Diddy. So I have McDonald's, seniors, and the budget all wrapped into one large thought. So let's take seniors, who are we serving? I don't really know. How many are we serving? I don't really know. What's our goal of serving the seniors? Are we serving all the seniors or only some of the seniors? Are we serving this kind of population or that kind of population? What are we serving them with? What's our programs? Of those 10 programs that we're serving seniors with, what are they costing us? What are the revenues bringing in? What are we actually achieving? So, it's from the McDonald's. And then you could transfer that to teens, you could transfer that to almost any other category. Not any other. Public works a little bit different, but in terms of service delivery to people. So that's, and then I couldn't find that easily enough. I went back, I spent more time, it's not easy to find. I'm not sure it's actually in there. And I think one of the reasons for that, and this is a broader discussion that we probably should have engaged in when we did the strategic plan, and that is the role of government. We have strategic plans. We're building a civic center. Who's that going to serve exactly, and what are we going to do? Is that going to serve everybody for everything? Or, again, going back to seniors, are we going to duplicate all services for seniors? Are we going to focus on the seniors who are at high risk and going to fall through? Are we going to do the shut-ins? Are we going to do the isolates, the married, et cetera, et cetera? So going back to our 5-year strategic plan, where we talked, but I don't think we dealt with some of those philosophical things, questions of the role of government, which then would have given me a better idea of, is the budget on target for achieving what those original goals were, and how well are we achieving it? So I'm missing, although I agree with my colleagues, it's a lot of information there, but when I was trying to answer some fundamental questions, we spending enough on seniors? We doing it right? Couldn't answer it. Should we move it to teens? I couldn't get those kinds of questions. It's not an issue only for the budget. I think the issue comes back to us at the next 5-year strategic plan for us to start on that kind of a level and then transmit it back into the budget. So, that's what I would be looking for from us in our subsequent discussions of trying to define better for the staff just what is our philosophy of government, and then ultimately to give that back to you, and then maybe, not in all areas, but in areas like seniors or teens where there's a specific population, for us to be able to understand what are we doing, what are we achieving, how much money, what's it cost us to deliver a service to a senior compared to a service to a teen, and what are we getting for that. So this is probably, with your new software, probably an easier thing to do than that. But otherwise, yeah, it's a lot of information here, and I hope as we provide guidance to the staff, we might, at the next year's budget, get down to them, drilling down to details and more exactly. It's my only comment.
Just to respond to that, because I agree with a lot of what you're saying there. And I guess the question that we may have to ask ourselves is, do we not like the process that we're currently using to extract that information? So using those two examples, we have both a senior advisory committee that works under the Park and Recs Commission, and then also a teen advisory committee. So, those are two areas where they're probably, a lot of seniors do come to our council meetings. We don't get a whole lot of teenagers, but they're two segments that we've said, hey, we want to see some additional feedback. So, that's one source where we get that information. The second source, and again, we some of us may not like the source or might want to change it around, but the source that we've had for a long time has been this community survey that we've done. And so taking information from that and looking at what percentages do people feel like they're not satisfied with service. Usually that's not the answer. Satisfaction level is usually pretty high. So it's those open-ended questions that we're asking. And I would just encourage that as we're doing this survey, that we continue to focus on open-ended questions and look at additional opportunities for providing those to residents, so that they can come back to us with some things that that they still feel that there's a need with. So, and they might need a little bit of prodding, because sometimes the open-ended question alone can be so general and vague that it doesn't trigger that thought. And so, asking it with a little bit of guidance, but still keeping it open-ended. So, if there was anything in community services, or anything from a recreational perspective, or anything for special needs or seniors, and then we had it that broad and open-ended, I think that we might get a little bit more detail in those responses. And so that's the only suggestion that I would make. And that's assuming that we continue to move forward with the model that we've had in place. But I do feel like we're getting that feedback. It's just, are we getting enough of it? And is there a way to get some better feedback than we have? And so those would just be my thoughts.
Yeah, it's a good thought, and I'm pretty sure, as my understanding is, we're capable of adding questions to that survey, aren't we, or shaping it? Isn't that true, Mr. Dunning?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the City Council, yes, the staff works with the consultant to look at the survey. Fundamentally, we've used a set number of questions over the years because it gives us the ability to measure things longitudinally, and whether or not we're continuing to deliver the kinds of services, and do we have an effect on the types of things that we strategically are then investing in our budget to address the things that we see in the survey. So if we want to move off of a longitudinal study about how we're doing over a longer period, then certainly we can focus more on other types of questions and then start doing a whole different process. The one thing to keep in mind is that any pollster is going to tell you that you have a budget of time that you can keep people's attention when you're doing a survey. And so there's ordinarily a budget of questions. And consequently, it's a process that takes a little bit of time and a little bit of art, as we know in science, to get something that is actually transferable, and you can generate something that is reflective of the community as a whole. We've tended to work with the consultant to develop those questions. In the past, we have not brought them to the council. You see them after the fact. If the council wants to change that process, that would be certainly up to you, but recognize that it's a fairly dynamic process to work with your pollster, and whether we're doing it on the fly at a council meeting or how we're going to do that would be a different question, but it's something that you can certainly look at when this comes around.
Yeah, I didn't mean to, there are some key longitudinal questions that you're going to want to keep, but then we could look at some of those things, where are we hitting exactly where we want to hit, but where aren't we? And I'm thinking more of substituting in and out rather than adding an extra half an hour to the thing. When does that come up?
We will start the process later in the summer. The survey would occur in the early fall. So we haven't started yet, obviously, but probably sometime midsummer is when we would secure a consultant and start that process. So you've got some time to think about it, but clearly, we tend to do it in the year that we're during an election. It seems to be somewhat odd, but fundamentally, it's done that way in order to provide a new council that gets seated the opportunity to develop a new 5-year plan predicated on a survey that tells you here's what the community is thinking. And as I was listening to the conversation, of course, the strategic plan you adopted last June. That's what the staff's been working on. Clearly, we want your feedback. We want what you would like to see the community achieve. So when the strategic plan comes around again for next year, we would welcome a robust process with the council to ensure that it reflects that which you believe are those appropriate goals. So you redo that 5-year plan every 2 years. It's not simply adding 2 years to the end and moving everything else up. You could look at it de novo, but fundamentally you've been providing some degree of stability with where the direction of the community is going, and so that's what that 3 years is allowing you to do. But certainly you can reprioritize anything in that process. When you're looking at substituting some things in and out, you'd want to ensure that if we're using open-ended questions, for example, that how you code those will drive, obviously, what the outcomes are that you're trying to interpret the data with. But fundamentally, you could focus on that. Of course, that's what we do at the very beginning of this, and there's some demographic questions at the end, and those that are somewhat based on geography, so we can get a better sense of where in the community certain issues are arising. So that's sort of the process and why you're doing it this fall. So it's a building block for your new strategic plan that will start after the first of the year sometime, and then you'll adopt in June of 2017.
Let me ask my colleague, Mr. Robinson, would you want to be on an ad hoc committee to, along with, would either be Hannah or Deborah, to look at the survey before it goes out and suggest some of the ways that we might better get at those kinds of goals?
I don't think so. I mean, I don't want to micromanage it, and I know what you're suggesting isn't necessarily micromanaging it, but I don't want to get down into that level of detail with it. What I would recommend substitutively would be that maybe when we come back for approval of this budget, that we think about it and give a little bit more guidance. I mean, that's going to give us a meeting or two, however long it's going to be, maybe 2 meetings. So it gives us some time to think about it. But, again, from my perspective, I still want it to be, again, I'm just speaking for myself, but I want the questions to be open-ended. But what I would really like to accomplish is that when we have asked the open-ended question, we typically, I don't know the number, but it's somewhere in the maybe 70 or 80% range, people say, there's nothing that I can think of. And so I want to try to draw a little bit more out. Not that I want to make them give me an answer, but I just want to make sure that they feel like it's been asked in such a way that they can answer it. I don't want to say, well, if I had to pick something, why don't you do this? When I really don't care, but I'll give you an answer here. I don't want that kind of response, but I would like to see, if possible, dropping that there's nothing, even though I like hearing there's nothing that I want to fix. Everything's great. I love hearing that. At the same time, there's at least one thing that I can think of myself that I'd like to fix.
Yeah, there are
I'm not
survey-
entirely perfect.
No,
There's
there are
that
s-
one thing.
There are survey techniques. As a matter of fact, I didn't do as many as True North, but I've done many surveys in my career. There are survey techniques that let you do that. That's a different approach than True North uses, but I'm sure they could adopt that, where you don't, it's kind of like a forced choice, and you end up getting answers to everything, even though they're not the first, but they are. It would get rid of that. So, all right, yeah, I don't mind bringing this back for further discussion.
That seems to make the most sense to me, that when we approve the budget, that we could provide that same guidance. That's when we'll be kind of having this exact same topic again.
So just to answer I don't know if this would answer all of your questions, but on page 29, I don't know if you can turn there, but there's $24,000 that's budgeted for senior program revenue. And then on page 176, there's $132,000. Multitude of things. Excursions is almost $18,000. There's holiday mini concerts, quarterly dinners for $15,000, senior clubhouse for $49,000, $48,000. Classes for about $5,000, the Sachs Award program for $3,000, Thursday meal program for $31,000, and a few others. The total's about $132,900. Participation's about $30,000, and we have about $100 of senior donations.
Doesn't even begin to answer the questions, who are the seniors, who are the unique seniors, what are they doing, what are the programs. I'm looking to the way McDonald's was able to say, let's throw more money at breakfast every day. In that same way, I'm looking for that kind of detail to give us guidance. This is what we've identified. Seniors, should we be putting more in there? But it's that kind of a process, and then through various iterations, and then more information. In there, for example, there's something there that said like we did 21,000 seniors or something, but what it meant was 21 seniors did 1,000 things, or 1,000 seniors did 21 things, or 500 seniors did, et cetera, et cetera. So it's just, I'm looking not to micromanage, but to give us an understanding of where's the value in spending our money. Are we reaching the seniors that we wanted to reach effectively, et cetera? Because it seems to me that when I look at all the information, it's terrific information. Yeah, we're spending $3 million in community services. Do I think they're doing a good job? Yes, I do. Do I attend almost all your events? Yes, I do. And do they seem like they function well? Same thing with economic development. They do a terrific job. I go to all their events. Looks like they're doing a great job. But I'd like to know, did we miss, are there 100 seniors sitting in their apartments somewhere in Lake Forest who are withering psychologically and medically, and could we have done something to reach them? I don't know. Ask the previous question, is that the group we want to be servicing? Or do we only want to service the seniors who are well enough to get in a bus or their car and come here? I mean, and there's no answer to that. That's us to figure out, what do we want to use government for. Same thing, the teens. We do a lot of stuff for the teens who don't have their own after-school latchkeys. The wrong word, but when I was a kid, that's what they called them. So a lot of our money goes to them, and is that what we want? And I'd say yes, but as a council, is that how we spend our money? What kind of money are we spending? What kind of a bang are we getting for that? Is teenage delinquencies down because we've been doing this? In the same way, Mr. Voigt asked the question, did the hotels, did that make the difference? No, it didn't. The sports park didn't make a difference because we were rising before. Okay, that's a useful thing to know, and I'd just like to be able to, when our service delivery is directed towards our people, to fine-tune it, to be able to say, yeah, that's the group we really wanted to get, and we're reaching them, and I know that because the death rate in seniors in Lake Forest, has gone down because the arrest of teenagers for narcotics has gone down.
Just the only thing I was going to say is, I thought you also said you didn't see any details at all in the budget, so I wanted to highlight those. But I think that you got to realize that McDonald's has invested very heavily in technology, and so each time someone buys a hamburger, buys a whatever, they have the ability to go through that amount of data. And I don't think we're going to probably ask every senior coming in, 10 minutes of questions at each event and have them register and obtain. I'm not necessarily disagreeing with you. I'm just saying that the data-intensive analytics that they provide and obtain through all the IT infrastructure they have, we're not going to really necessarily have that to be able to determine a lot. There's not a lot of data.
I don't mind going in that direction, but no, I don't want us to devote. Nor do I want us to devote resources, because the resources to do that would have to come out of the service delivery system. So I'm not asking for that kind of detail or for that kind of resource allocation. But it's not a bad goal to be looking at and saying, could we answer those questions? We won't answer them perfectly, but at least we'd have more information than we have now.
I'd agree. The more information we have, the better. So, and I think that the city continues to collect more and more data. I know it's happening. Businesses are doing it. Cities are doing it. We're all doing it as individuals. We're just becoming, you hear the term out there a lot, big data. Sometimes you get so much data you don't know what to do with it nowadays, and so it just gets trapped in a data hole. So, but I agree with you. I mean, we want to get more information as much as we possibly can, try to understand needs. The conversation that you want to have, I think, or that you've talked about, I think is an important one, and it can be one that's had at this dais, can be one that's had in the community as well. What's the expectation of what a city is going to provide? I'm confident in my belief that the city's not supposed to provide everything. I think that we could all agree on that, but the city doesn't provide everything. We have certain priorities that we have to focus on, called out by state law, and that's what people expect from the community. Number one, public safety, then number two, infrastructure, and then park and recreations have become a part of that. Everything else kind of supports that, not to diminish any department, but they kind of support those activities more than anything. But there are tons of other institutions. I mean, I know some of us are involved in different philanthropic groups or religious organizations in the community, and they have as much responsibility, if not more so, I would say, to some of these underserved parts of the population. If we can help identify that in some way, just because we're a larger organization, larger institution, then that gives us the ability to communicate that need to other organizations and institutions that might be better served and actually have a calling or a mission to serve those underserved people. So, I see getting more data as definitely a positive thing without it becoming too onerous on the staff or the individuals you're trying to collect the data from. Similar to people can only sit on a phone so long. I don't know how many surveys you get in the mail nowadays, but gosh, it's I've started getting surveys that have $1 and $5 bills inside them, so that I actually fill the thing out, right? The marketing companies are trying to find different ways to actually get people to invest their time, recognizing how valuable that is. And so again, I'm just agreeing. The more data we can get, the better, without making it onerous. And so I would encourage us all to move forward in that direction. And I don't know if there are other questions, but if you're willing to entertain a motion, we need a motion to move forward, or since we're not approving it tonight.
No, you're not approving the budget, obviously, this evening. You have
Yeah.
more development to occur. So this evening, the purpose is really to solicit the kind of feedback that we're hearing from the council this evening. If there are things that are proposed in the budget that you want to remove, or things you want to add, or things that you want to change. Now would be the right time to advise staff as to what those might particularly be. If there are things that aren't there that you want there, then those are the things that you'd want to identify. And of course, it's a function, as you all, I think, understand, that the staff's looking for direction from the council, obviously, understanding that ultimately, the whole council needs to approve a budget, so you want to build it so it's reflective of, obviously, what the council is desirous of having. So, in the absence of anything else, I've taken notes. I know the staff has. This is the conversation. It's an interesting one. How you structure a budget in order to answer the prime question of the role of government, that's a fairly large question. And so how you structure a budget to really do that could be a challenge, but we'll give that a thought. We'll see what we can come up with. But if there's any changes or anything, that's what we're looking for tonight as well. If there's not, then I think fundamentally, then our recommendation is that you conduct the workshop, which you've done. And if there's no changes, then I think we're finished. But if there are, then we're certainly glad to answer any more specific questions. Or if there's a desire by the council to change anything, let us know that, so that we can prepare a final budget and bring it back to you at the second meeting of June.
I had two general things that I'd like changed. And my general comments were not for this. I don't expect that for this budget, but that's a whole process, as you said, a challenging process. But in this happens in almost everybody's budget. There'll be enormous jumps in things. Like in economic development, and I'm not picking on you. Communication services jump from $15,000 to $45,000. On neighborhood watch, the participation goes down from $1,850 to $500. So almost every budget, whether it's in the KPIs or in the actual budget figures, there are anomalies, big jumps. And I think it would be very helpful if there was a footnote there to explain all those big jumps. And they're in everybody's report, so that's a general report. The other thing that I wanted is you're tickling us, but you're not giving us a good scratch, as I would tell my cat. You're saying, for example, in the police budget, it's stars went up 13% from past years. When we do that, 1 year to another isn't give us a chance for a judgment of a trend. That's not really a trend. So I think where you give us those kinds of teasers, if you gave us a 3 or a 5 year trend, that helps me identify, this is a trend, it's going up every year. But it's like with the TOT, it's going up 7.5% a year. Well, that tells me something versus it was 7.5% and then 7.5%. So where you have anomalies, I'd like a little footnote that says communication because we or the software because we're getting new software. And when you're trying to give us a trend, just don't give us the 2 year, give us a 3 to a 5 year, so we really know the trend. Those were the two questions that came up over and over again, looking at items. Other than that, as they said in the beginning, and as I agreed, there's a wealth of data here. Thank you.
All right. I praise publicly, I criticize privately. I have had several discussions with the staff, with their boss, to whom I look up greatly. As such, if you don't see me ask questions, I've asked them, I've answered them for myself, and so long as they are reflecting the outcome in the final product, that's all that matters. I'm sure that my input will be taken into account and it'll be reflected in the outcome. That said, the only folks that I criticize publicly are the folks to my left, my peers. in part because the state law does not allow me to have private conversations with them on the same subject. I want to go down the only one category, and that is the City Council's budget, Mr. Dunick, with which I have questions and about which I have not spoken with you or anyone. May I do that? The first one is self-explanatory. It's the salary for the 4 individuals who draw a salary. The next item is self-explanatory, Medicare, 1.5%. The next subcategory, retirement. I am not quite familiar with how retirement works in the governmental sector. 20-plus years I've been and I am in the private sector. I am just puzzled that the retirement benefits to Mr. Voits is more than the benefits to Mr. Gardner, Hamilton, and Robinson combined. I don't understand it. He benefits from PERS. Gardner and Hamilton benefit from PARS, and Robinson benefits from Social Security. That makes sense on its face. And yet, Voits literally receives more in benefits, in retirement benefits, than the other 3 combined. Can you help me understand that, Keith?
There's 3 systems you can go into when you get into the city as a council member. One is PERS. It's the council member's choice. One is PARS, and the other one is Social Security. That was, I wasn't here at the time, but probably Councilmember Voigt's decision to go into PERS. As is, it was Dr. Gardner's decision and Mayor Hamilton's decision to go into PARS, and Councilmember Robinson's to go into Social Security.
Okay, can it, given that it's costing us more, could we not introduce, Mr. Dunick, my colleagues, could we not introduce something that somewhere in the middle, everybody gets treated the same, as opposed to one person's retirement outweighing the other 3 people's retirement put together? I don't understand it. It's just, why can't we just not pick something in the middle and have everybody stick to that?
Mr. Mayor, members of the council, I think we understand the question that you're asking.
Thank you.
Certainly, there are some issues involved in how the council might want to modify the choices that future council members could select. What you can do as it relates to those who are already in the system, I'm not sure of. I'd want to spend a little bit of time talking with our personnel attorney about those issues. And we could certainly come back to the council with the information to give you a sense of what could be done on a go-forward basis, or what might be done as it relates to those who are currently in the system. And I'm not sure I understand that enough to make us a good recommendation that you could do anything at this juncture. I'd want to really understand that. But fundamentally, as Mr. Neves has indicated, it's been the policy of the councils in the past to allow one of 3 choices. And there is a difference in cost, as you can see. It's clearly the case, because one being in the classic PERS is a different a cost for the city, and that it's related to PARS, which is more like a 401k kind of system versus a defined benefit program. And consequently, that's what drives the difference in cost, is one's benefit, one's contribution. One's actually fairly portable, the other one not so much. Social Security is clearly self-explanatory. But rather than give you an idea of what you could do on all fronts, let's come back to you with that answer.
I would be grateful to you for that, and I would look forward to it, Mr. Dunick. Thank you, sir. The next category, I always bring this up every year, 60,000 plus in memberships and dues. League of California Cities, $21,000. Southern California Association of Governments, 7,000 plus. Orange County Council of Governments, 8,000. And it goes on for a grand total of $61,000. Do we really need this, Dwight? $61,000. Are we really getting our money's worth? Do we need it in the first place?
Well, people can have differing opinions on whether or not they feel this is necessary. I'll bring LAFCO as an example. LAFCO is basically how is the organization that allows communities like ourselves to actually form and become cities, right? And so the annexations of Foothill Ranch and Portola Hills went through that organization. Not being a member of that organization, city manager could probably explain better than I would, because I don't know the full charter there. I don't know if that would have precluded us from being able to annex areas, but definitely wouldn't have developed a solid relationship with the commission at the very least. So
I don't even think we can get out of
Just
that.
quickly, as it relates to the Local Agency Formation Commission in particular, the city's required by state law to actually pay its fair share to the Local Agency Formation Commission in Orange County. So each city pays, as well as the County of Orange.
So although there's nothing for us to annex at this point,
You cannot eliminate that without breaking state law. You could try, but I would not recommend it. It's fundamentally an assessment predicated on their budget that they do every year, and it's adopted by that board. LAFCO is essentially a state agency, is what it is, and the state's requiring us to pay for it.
I see. I'm
But it wouldn't, just on that point, but LAFCO's not really a city council expense. It's not something the city, it might be under the general government or city manager or city clerk, but
You could place it anywhere, yes.
Yeah, it's not a-
You could place it anywhere in the budget you so desire. Clearly, it relates to sort of a general governmental responsibility and obligation.
Right.
You could place it in, I wouldn't suggest that we place it in community services, but you'd have some flexibility about where you'd want to house that.
yeah, whereas
clearly.
the other four are more city, we're members or can be members of the other four are more related to city council activities, but LAFCO itself is.
Yes, while that's true, I think the theory behind it is that there are city members on LAFCO. They're appointed by the city selection committee, of which the city is a member. Whether that's a sufficient connection for the council is the question all you could answer. But fundamentally, I think it was that way because you have city representatives who are actually in the past, Councilmember Herzog was on LAFCO for a long time. So you could have one of your own members be, but someone else. But that was the connection, the argument for it. But you could place it virtually anywhere you want.
And then, with two more of those, since you asked the question, with both SCAG and OCOG, again, the staff can help provide some additional details here, but they do a tremendous amount of research that, from my understanding, our staff relies on data that's coming out, whether it's SCAG, things like the Regional Transportation Plan or the Sustainable Communities Plan. And there's a lot of data that we use on a regular basis. I'm guessing a lot of it ends up being public works from that perspective. And then OCOG is the regional Orange County Council of Governments that feeds into SCAG, and they're doing some reports at times, or they're supporting the reports that are coming through SCAG. So again, it's another dues thing. I don't think, I serve on the Transportation Committee, but that's not something that's appointed through OCOG or anything like that. That's any council member in the Southern California Association of Governments area can serve on that. And I think I'm probably the only one. But I don't think we have an OCOG representative right now. I think Barbara Kogerman represents our specific district. Councilmember McCullough, former Councilmember McCullough represented the city for a couple of years on OCOG as well. But again, I think the vast majority of what they're trying to accomplish there is develop regional data that we can use for housing plans, transportation plans, things of that nature. And I don't know if the staff wants to add anything else on top of that.
Yes, thank you, Councilmember Robinson. The Southern California Association of Governments is the largest metropolitan planning organization in the United States. And its purpose, as created through state and federal laws, is to coordinate development and the movement of goods and services and so forth throughout the entire Southern California region. And they have a set number of responsibilities that are delegated down by the state, but also are used for the purposes of distributing federal dollars primarily through transportation. The Regional Transportation Plan is adopted by the Southern California Association of Governments, and as was indicated, a lot of that builds from the bottom up through the Orange County Council of Governments to SCAG, that then feeds into the California Department of Transportation. So it's money that the county is getting through the SCAG organization as it's promulgated and regulated by, or developed by them, and that also flows the federal dollars. So it's a conduit that the federal government uses by which to distribute money for a variety of purposes, primarily transportation, I think, is the one that we would look at the most. One of the responsibilities that SCAG has is to do with the regional housing assessment, needs assessment, and so we do that process through OCOG so that it's not SCAG telling us what we need, but we telling them what we want in Orange County. So the two are integrated. There's some interlocking of those boards, and consequently we do rely upon a lot of the data and input that we're receiving from both SCAG as well as OCOG. I think a prime example of the OCOG is the work they do on behalf of all of the cities in the County of Orange through the Center for Demographic Research at Cal State Fullerton. And so we use that data as a way by which to look at what's going on in our own community. So I don't want to belabor it more, but it's fundamentally that's what both of those are doing. However, they are voluntary organizations that you can either belong to or not. The staff believes, I believe, that there is value in the city's participation in those organizations.
And then just, sorry,
No,
since you asked, so,
please,
you know, the
please.
last two that we have here,
Yes.
League of California Cities, as well as the Association of California Cities Orange County. Our city manager actually used to be was it executive director, is that the title, of League of California Cities, Orange County Division, back in a long time ago.
But not too long.
Yeah, not too long ago, but a long time ago. Those two organizations, you know, they provide a lot of different types of services, both educational for council members, but also statewide lobbying efforts. And I think it was last year, it might have been toward the end of 2014, I can't recall exactly, but we eliminated the budget for a city lobbyist. And at the time, my argument was that I felt that unless we have some very specific issues that we want to lobby either the California legislature or Congress on, then I think that we're kind of like a drop in the bucket as a lobby with our lobbyists. We're just one city representing 85,000 people. There's a bunch of lobbyists up there. Of course, our lobbyists would probably represent 10 different cities, so they'd come in with a little bit of firepower behind them. But you know, I think that the lobbying efforts of the League of California Cities and Association of California Cities Orange County come with a lot more power. There's a big punch there. And if you combine those two budgets, the $20,700 and the $16,000, roughly about $36,000, that's what we were spending on lobbying efforts last year, or sorry, probably in 2014, and I think we cut last year. And we were spending that twice. So now I feel like we've cut it once. And, you know, I see the opportunity for hiring an outside lobbyist when we have a very specific bill, like we had the dissolution of the redevelopment agency. And all the dynamics around that and the fact that we needed to get what was titled a local bill, but an assembly bill passed so that we could not have to do all the crazy back and forth maneuvering that we had to do with the Department of Finance. So in instances like that, I think that having an outside lobbying firm will be beneficial. I just didn't see the benefit in having one on retainer when we don't have significant issues that are specific to the city. So to answer your question, I mean, I think that we've cut some things in the past, including the lobbying budget. I look at everything here and I say, all of this is something that I see value in.
Great.
Aside from whether or not any council members decide to participate in being a member of LAFCO or being involved in OCOG or SCAG or League of California Cities committees or ACCOC committees. So I think value just in the services that they provide.
So before we go on, I just wanted to see if I could seek consensus to move the membership and dues out of the city council department into, anybody? All right, I'm going to nominate the city clerk.
I'm seconding that, so.
All right, can I get a third and fourth?
Yeah, start.
All right, so maybe we can, because we talked about this last year, and I want to
Actually, we did, yes.
flush it out of the city council
I
department,
was going to.
once and for all.
Yes, I was actually going to point out that I've actually brought it up briefly last year, and we talked about it, but we didn't finalize it, we did not solidify it, but we talked about putting it elsewhere next year, which is now, so.
Well, we can take a vote on that. I'm going to vote no. I don't really care where it ends up in the budget. An expenditure is an expenditure, comes out of the overall fund. I mean, I don't want to talk about it every year for sure, but it really doesn't matter to me where it sits. It's kind of irrelevant. So
That's one way to look at it, so.
No,
but-
and I agree. I just, I think because it's in the city council department is why we get to talk about it every
Well, yeah, if we don't, last year when we had this discussion, and I was new and I didn't know either one of them, and my inclination was to kill them both, and city clerk told me that the League of California Cities was invaluable providing her data, and I know at least Mayor Hamilton, Mayor Pro Tem Woods go to those. So that would be a reason to stay. But if it's going to stay in this budget, I've been to the Association of California Cities. Several of their things, I found no value in them at all, personally. So I wouldn't mind, I'd have no objections if it stays in our budget for us cutting it, because I didn't find it to be of value. So it's okay with me. It's okay with me if it goes. If it stays, then I'd like to have the discussion of cutting it.
At least, I'm sorry, go ahead.
the point that I was trying to make was, irrespective of what involvement council members have, each one of these organizations provides a service for us. So if you look at our legislative platform, legislation that we're voting on, we've looked at it, I think, over the last two council meetings. You'll note in the staff report whether those organizations are supporting or opposing it. And then if they're supporting or opposing, they're taking a solid position in Sacramento with their lobbyists. The networking, whether somebody sits on one of these boards or committees or anything like that, I think that's all irrelevant in my mind. If we all choose to do that, I think that can only provide benefit for the city in that there's some regional involvement, opportunities to connect with other council members in other cities that may be members of the Orange County Transportation Authority, which are doling out a lot of dollars, which our Director of Public Works would know very well. Measure M money, M2 money, OCTA has over $1 billion budget, right? And, if we don't have solid relationships there, sometimes, we might get passed over a year or two. When former Mayor Herzog was on OCTA, I would guess that we had a little bit higher of a profile because you have a council member who's represents the city who's also on that board. But again, aside from all of that, I mean, I see value and benefit, and if the staff disagrees, I'd definitely like to hear that. But and I mean that seriously. I'd like to hear any comments that you might have. But personally, I think that there is benefit to being involved in these organizations for all the points that I've already stated. So.
All right, so that we can wrap this up, I'm convinced that 5 out of 5 need to stay. As Dwight pointed out, it's cosmetic where it is. As Andrew said, and I second that, it should be elsewhere, but whatever we decide, I'm fine either way. So let's either decide to move it or not, or, so we can move forward.
There's a motion and a second, so let's vote.
All right.
Okay, so
What was the motion?
I'm moving that we, it really,
keeping it, but moving it to a different department.
it really could go, I could go either way. We could keep it in there and just say, we discussed this the last 2 years, no need to discuss it further. Keep it in the city council budget. Or move it out to another budget.
Do me a favor.
I think your motion was to
Can
give
we-
it to the city clerk.
Point of clarification, where would that be moved to?
He said the city clerk in his original motion.
So I'll make a motion that we move it to the city clerk.
Okay, I second
But I'm
that.
barely making that motion. So we have a motion and second if we
Do we
vote.
barely vote, or do we have to?
No, just vote so we can move forward, please.
That motion carries with Council Member Robinson and Mayor Pro Tem Voight opposed.
And,
I think we have a new gang of 3.
And so, I'd like to clarify, the fact is that in my line items here, nothing was talked about the signature verification process that's going on right now. It's costing the city $85,000. Is that on city clerk's budget, or where was that budgeted? And then the proposed election, if they're the two to the immediate far bookends are fortunate enough to get a recall, where would that be budgeted? The $250,000 of city money.
The signature verification is ongoing, and I do not have an invoice yet from the Registrar of Voters. However, the budget that your workshop is about is the 16-17 budget. The signature verification expense would be in the 15-16 budget. And when an invoice is received, it is anticipated that a budget adjustment to the city clerk's budget would occur, and that's probably going to be at the June 7th or June 21st council meeting. Thank you.
And that's somewhere around $85,000, correct? That's one of the reasons. That's one of the reasons I voted against putting that other budget stuff on you.
Right, approximately. So a budget adjustment would come back in order to allocate the funds to pay that invoice. As for a potential recall election, if an election is qualified and called, it would occur in the 16-17 budget, but we would know that before the budget is adopted at the second meeting in June on the 21st. So whereas there's no provision for an extra election at this time, we'll know the answer of whether or not one will be necessary, and the appropriate dollars would be added to the city clerk's election budget when it's presented for final adoption on the 21st.
And how much is the city's budgeted amount allocated every 2 years for elections?
$60,000 is the approximate cost of the election every 2 years.
So this signature gathering, and that would cost approximately 8 years worth of elections. 4 years. $240,000
Ish.
ish.
Because I don't have an actual estimate of the actual potential cost of the recall election, I can't say whether it would be, twice the norm. And plus, there are efficiencies of scale that occur every election with the Registrar of Voters Office, whereas we budget $60,000. Many times the election has been less than that. For example, in 2014, it was approximately $45,000.
So thank you.
Okay, I just have 2 more items. Is everyone else done?
I just want to quickly, I'm done as far as the city council and the rest. I just want to quickly see what it takes. What do I need to do to move the 15,000 forward for what April was talking about?
Well, I kind of think
Procedurally, what do I need to do?
my thought is that it interests me, your proposal. However, our normal process is to go out to RFP to seek more than just one kind of bid. So, I'm not sure if that's where folks would want to go, but that's my humble 2 cents.
What's the city attorney? Can we act on something introduced the way it's been introduced?
Yeah, I think what you're looking for is feedback and straw polls on what you want brought back, so yes.
I think that there's other agencies out there that actually have been to the city, and I think that it's interesting proposal, but I'd hate to put the cart before the horse. in other words, and get out in front of something when there'll be other people coming to possibly bid on adoption center in Lake Forest.
Okay. Maybe we'll all talk and then let the staff discuss. When we had the discussion about an adoption center, that night I was having some thoughts about, what might be some different ways to accomplish what my hope was. And again, my hope was that we don't hire city employees to run a facility. We don't. My preference was that we didn't even have county employees running a facility because, as I mentioned, I was concerned about salaries, pension impact, all those sorts of things. So I started looking at, okay, what are some concepts that might work that where we could try to encourage or incentivize the private sector to do what some of them had already been doing. There was one small, I think adoption center would probably be a stretch to even call it that, but that's how they were referring to it, and they were renting some space at I think an animal hospital or something like that, and kind of like operating their own adoption center, so to speak, here in Lake Forest. And so that idea caught my attention. I talked to Ms. Josephson about that concept, and I'd be interested in the staff kind of exploring what options might be available. I don't know that specific one might be something that would work, but there might be some hybrid concept around it. When I look at what we've done, what the council before me did with partnering with the Lake Forest Chamber of Commerce, which involved they're actually being involved in city events, providing some compensation for the services they're providing. I look at the offer to provide 3 events in town, and there might be some compensation that can be provided for that they can use any way they wish, whether it might involve the facilities that they're going to pay for or anything else. I mean, it's really up to them how they'd spend the money, and I'd rather it was focused on that. I think that as I thought about it a little bit further, if I started focusing specifically on a facility itself, then I wasn't sure, and I haven't had a chance to talk to the city attorney about this, but if we focused on funding a facility, would we have any liabilities with respect to that facility regarding anything that might occur there, structurally, anything that might happen? I'm not really sure. I hadn't had a chance to talk to him about that. So I think that leaving it a little bit more open-ended for organizations might be better. And yeah, I mean, there could be some others that are interested. If we were to provide a adoption center ourselves, who knows what our costs might be when we're looking at personnel and everything else. Doing something like this, there might be a few different organizations that would want to help, and if they're providing education and services for us in some way, then who knows what might come of that. So I'd be interested in the staff exploring that. I don't know if that murks up. You're going to get 5 different opinions here, so I hope you can get some clear direction.
Well, I'll make a motion that we add $15,000 to the budget and for that specific purpose, and that we ask the staff to come back to us as soon as they can with an RFP designed to as seed money. I think your example of the Chamber of Commerce is a good example. That was seed money, and they basically took it from there. That's kind of what she's asking for, but I also agree, why should we give it to her? There maybe we will, but there may be 5 or 6 other organizations here already who would like to do that, so
I'd like to second that.
I think an RFP would be a good thing to do.
I'll second that.
And I might have missed it, sorry, but was there a specific, is there any discussion about allowing staff to pick the dollar amount, because they might say, hey, we only need 5, hey, we need 25. I'm just thinking out loud there on if the motion needs a specific dollar amount.
I don't mind. If you make it 15, they'll come in with a 15. If you make it 25, they'll come in for 25. If you make it 50, they'll come in for 50. My thought was, if somebody thinks they can do it for 15, God bless her, and let anybody else come in and match that. So that was, my rationale for going with the 15. I think that's extremely reasonable, and anybody who could match that, wouldn't that be great?
Yeah, I'm actually comfortable with that. I think that if we need to adjust that. But the fact is, it gives a starting point. The fact is, it's seed money, and I think that as much discussion we've had with dogs and cats, I'd like the staff to come back to us with some ideas on that. Thank you.
Well, it just, one more thought on that, and I'm not trying to belabor it, but what's the revenue, would there be ever an opportunity for a shelter that comes into the town like this to be compensated by the county so that, in essence, someone might pay us to do it? Does that kind of make sense? If they sign a contract with the county to relieve some of the, but we still, in essence, are paying the county the same cost, and then they get the revenue, so in essence, we'd be kind of paying it all the way down the line. Does that make any sense? So that someone would come in and say, hey, I'm getting $50,000 of revenue from the county, which you're paying, and I'm relieving you of the burden from it to go be, the animal in the shelter, and then here we are paying even more on top. That's...
Well, let me try to clarify. I think what he's trying to say is, if after the 72-hour hold, we're charged days where the dogs or cats or birds or whatever might be at the shelter, we're charged a daily charge, right? I forget what the actual term is. So if an organization were to pick up those pets after the 72-hour hold, then we wouldn't be paying the county for those
Correct.
days, and so we could potentially pay some other organization in some way. And I'm not, again, I haven't talked to the city attorney about that, so I'm not really sure what liabilities we would have. I know that was discussed a little bit with the Chino Hills concept, but I think that's what he was trying to explain. So I don't know if I clarified it or not.
Yeah, but is there any chance that they would ever get revenue from the county? Okay.
It depends on what relationship they would establish with the county. Generally, with rescue groups, the rescue groups are paying a discounted rate to take those animals from the shelter because there are costs. There is an RFI out, or will be out shortly, from the county looking at adoption centers, but right now there are no official adoption centers with the county. So I think what we would be talking about here is looking at what could we develop with a $15,000 budget. It would almost be like a pilot for 1 year, and then as the county's adoption center plans solidify, we can look at what we're doing and how it works with that, if it's a supplement or if it's duplication, and we would come back to you and continue to update.
That answers.
I think the savings comes not in taking them after they've gone into the county, but in preventing them from going in the first place, either with lost and found programs, feral cat programs, help desk programs. So it's preventing the intake in the first place. That's the profit to us, because that reduces our costs. Once you've let them be picked up, gone in there and everything, come out, we've already spent the bulk of our money in that process. So, at least in my mind, I'm looking for somebody who does the latter, namely prevents intakes rather than another rescue group. Says rescue groups going up now taking animals, so that adds nothing. What we don't have is prevention of animals going in there in the first place. So that's what I'd be looking for mostly to achieve.
All right, I guess we have a motion, a second.
That motion carries unanimously.
Okay, so am I the only one left? So just briefly, I wanted to talk about the $500,000 for the general plan.
Oh, thank you.
And so, I have a little map up here. Is more of a priority, in my mind at least, I see potential for maybe a specific plan kind of along between the 5 and Rockfield. It's almost like an L, and then going up to Muirlands, the Irvine, Lake Forest, kind of where the Lake Forest lanes are, the Hat, some of those kind of the Pep Boys all the way up to the Mimis. So that's just my 2 cents on that. I don't know if there's even any discussion on it, but I think we could do a specific plan for that area to help revitalize that area. That just seems like a bigger need to me than going into a general plan that just kind of might be updating something that could maybe wait a little longer. I don't know.
Isn't there, it's been a long time since we've had our general plan updated. What is suggested, and is there litigation of how long we can go?
I can defer to the city attorney about the possibility of litigation. The city's general plan was adopted when the city incorporated shortly thereafter, so it's about a 25-year-old plan. And there are some of the elements that need to be updated on a more periodic basis. Some you never really have to. It's not uncommon for cities to go long periods, like 25 years, before you update, because it's a major project. However, there is utility in looking comprehensively at your general plan through all areas of the community. Whether or not you decide to do some type of specific plan, call it that for the moment, in any one particular area, there may be others within the community. And for example, re-looking at an area down around the freeway at El Toro. There's a couple of shopping centers there. There's across the street. There's a number of issues that you might look at and include. It's also a long-term document, so you might be looking at a variety of uses in the long term that may yet develop or redevelop it. Now, what the staff's been planning to do is to bring the council a kickoff presentation relative to the general plan update, which would be actually at your meeting next week, I believe. Ms. Ackerman's still writing that report. I'm anxiously awaiting to look at my first review of it. But rather than not doing that at this juncture, it's really whether you decide to do it as a comprehensive general plan update or you're going to do some focused studies in a few areas. It's still going to cost money, so the allocation is probably appropriate. And so you could reserve a decision as to what you would care to do after you see what it is that Ms. Ackerman is going to present to you along that line. But think about a document that goes out 25 years. And if you give that some thought for a moment, the Lake Forest of 25 years ago does not reflect what it looks like today. El Toro Road is dramatically different from the freeway today than what it was 25 years ago. And of course, you're seeing development occur today. What we do, how we do things 25 years from now with technology and other issues is still interesting. I had challenged Gail, quite honestly, is we probably could use a futurist in this effort to try and figure out what's going to be going on, because the advent of the internet, for example, in internet sales, and I've become more familiar with some of that issue myself, looking at it, and fundamentally, yeah, you're seeing some real struggle with brick and mortar stores. We have Sports Chalet closing in this town. There's others that are closing. They're being hammered by internet sales. So what does that mean in terms of how you start to develop those areas is another issue. I don't want to steal Gail's thunder, but I will one little part, because I've talked about this with her and others, is we're right next to the Irvine Spectrum. It's an incredible opportunity to sort of figure out how we capitalize on that. And so you may want to have a conversation. It might affect just the area you're talking about, Mayor Hamilton, or others as well. So that's a long response, but it tells me that fundamentally the dollars are probably necessary. You may want to defer some decisions relative to what you do until after you get the presentation.
Okay.
Yeah, and I probably should have said it better. Maybe making it more of a priority or prioritizing certain parts of the general plan update. That's probably a better way to say it.
And just speaking to that, I mean, I think that's going to occur organically. The vast majority of the square miles of our town are residential, and I think it's highly unlikely that in a general plan update we would talk about knocking out neighborhoods to do anything, whatever it might be. We're not bringing a football team to Lake Forest, so we're not going to be building any stadiums or anything like that. But
Is that a motion?
No, it's not. It's definitely not. So, I think some of the areas that you're talking about are just going to become extremely obvious, but, I can think of a number as well throughout the town, and impact of internet sales are having a huge impact on our overall revenue base. I mean, we're looking at sales tax. It was TOT and property tax and other taxes were up 7 and 8%. Sales tax is up 2%, right? And if it weren't for a handful of new residents that we've already received, that number might have even been a little bit lower. Probably not significant, but might have been 1.5%. So sales tax is not tracking, and that's just another, I know we've already settled the issue, so I don't want to rehash it, but it's just another reason why we need to be involved in regional and statewide organizations, like League of Cities, Orange County Association of, whatever, ACCOC, that one. We need to be involved in those because they're helping talk about some of these major policy issues that are having an effect and will continue to have an effect on our budget. Whether it's gas tax drop, which Councilmember Nick probably knows very well, the impact of that and how electric vehicles and things like that are starting to have an impact on gas tax. That's definitely going to be something that we're going to have to keep tracking, and how VMT affects all of that. And then also internet tax. Is that going to occur? Or right now the tax that on internet purchased goods, the way I understand it, and Keith and I have talked about this a number of times, and I met with our sales tax guy about this maybe a couple of years ago, but it comes from the distribution center, right? So if the distribution center is in Ontario, but somebody in Lake Forest purchases something from a company in, I don't know, that's based in Houston, but it ships from Ontario, then Ontario is getting a lot of that sales tax benefit. So, it's we're really going to have to continue to look at that, and having people who are lobbying on our behalf, I think, is really important. That's why the ACCOC thing is probably even more important, because when it comes to that specific issue, because they have the interests of Orange County cities in mind who are being impacted by that particular issue. So, I mean,
just wanted to add to the mayor's comments. When I'm not busy working on the city, I spend a lot of time buying and selling stocks, and I have a pretty substantial investment in REITs, real estate investment trusts, and I specialize in medical and retail REITs. And although I'm familiar with the whole area, and that area is in flux, extreme flux at the moment, and some things are thriving and some things are dying. So I believe this would be the wrong time, maybe the worst possible time, to do a general plan, given all the changes that are happening, as you said, in internet and elsewhere. So I'd be more inclined to go with what you said, Mayor Hamilton, with a limited rather than a general, just because this is the wrong time. There's so many things going to change in the next 10 years that doing a general plan will already be obsolete in that time. So I'd rather focus on areas. That's what I'm going in. I don't want to discourage Mrs. Ackerman, and give us your best shot. But you got an uphill battle with me apparently there too. So, but I'd be happy to see what you have to say. But that's, that would be my major objection to doing that kind of a project now, is this is a really flux time in the real estate industry. So is now the time to be doing a general plan?
I hear what you're saying, and the reason why I disagree is not with your comments there, because I definitely agree. Major change, I just think that's the new norm. So, it's, for most of my adult life, I feel like the world's been in a constant state of change. So much has occurred since I graduated from high school, and I just see that change in technological development and, how we live, how we shop, how we work, all those sorts of things just continuing to change at a fairly rapid pace. That's why I agree. The city manager and I had the word futurist has probably been mentioned at least a couple of dozen times in meetings that we've had over the last nearly 4 years. So, it's bringing in a consultant to talk about what changes might occur. They're a consultant, right? Bringing in a futurist to talk about it, that's the entire focus of their job and career, right? That's what they spend all their time on. A consultant might touch on it a little bit, but a futurist, mean, that's his title. He's trying to tell you, what he views, and with providing tons and tons of data behind it. So, I know you didn't say you were a definite no. You just said you're going to be hard to work on. So, I hope she gives it her best shot.
Yeah, maybe Marty McFly is open to our futurist slot. I was just going to mention, I went to a volleyball tournament over the weekend, and I saw that Young's Market in Tustin, they're a big sales tax generator. So there are opportunities for us always to, but I think Tustin is your second favorite city, so.
My second favorite city.
All right, with that, I was just going to add one more item about, I think we had talked sometime recently about the after-school programs, and I would never want anyone that's in a need-based situation or, situation where a latchkey or something like that, but I think we had said something in the past about looking at maybe the revenue, what we would charge for that. I don't really necessarily have an opinion, but I just thought that would be something that we could examine too as part of the budget.
Oh, the other thing, yes, I'm glad you mentioned that. I would like, on the revenue side, and I would like us to think more about how we can involve private industry in the city. So I'd like the new dog park, for example, to be the PetSmart dog park. I'd like us to have a committee and to go around to the large corporations and see if we can't get somebody to fund the Etnies Performing Arts Center and the Panasonic conference room, etc. See if we can't.
I'll help you there, sure.
Oh, all right.
That's
Okay.
a good idea, actually.
thank you.
That's a good idea.
I think let's concentrate on some innovative ways to generate a little more revenue with involving the private community. So if you'd like to, anybody, we can't have 3 people on the committee.
It'll be you and me, we can do it.
Okay.
Was staff looking into this, or?
Oh, no, the same way we did the ad hoc committee with Keith and Mr. Donick. I was thinking an ad hoc committee then with Deborah or Jessica and Mr. Donick to begin to see, what's out there in the community and what we can flush out to get the community involved in funding.
Yeah, we named the city hall after whoever wants it, $10 million.
Yeah, the naming privileges, exactly.
We named the city hall after whoever wants it.
Well,
$10 million bucks.
Maybe the Civic Center, not the City Hall. But
So the Adam Nick Civic Center?
I didn't say 100,000, I said 10 million. But I would do it for 100,000, just so you folks know. I would do it.
I'm not a fan. I know what we're trying to accomplish. I look at cities that have done these sorts of things, and usually they're cities that are in dire straits financially, and they usually are looking for sources of revenue to keep the lights on, to keep the streets paved. I look at our all funds, $106.7 million. The most money we've had in the bank in a long time. The fact that we're able to cash flow a bunch of stuff, and I just don't see the value in it at this point. It doesn't mean that it couldn't be an option in the future, but
Right.
I'm just not supportive of it
Dwight,
right now.
money is like health. You just cannot have enough of.
Oh, I understand, but if you needed the money 20 years from now, the value in that, because you're usually buying naming rights for a long period of time. So I think I was in high school when Qualcomm paid for the Jack Murphy Stadium to be named Qualcomm. And San Diego was literally in a financial situation where they had to have that money. They couldn't afford to renovate the stadium, so they had to do it. And so that was a long time ago. And if we ever needed to, then the value there would be
Yeah, but don't you
at its highest later in the future. It wouldn't be there now.
But don't you think the best moment for you to negotiate something is when you come from a point of strength, not weakness? I don't want to negotiate this when I'm in dire financial needs 20 years from now, if that ever happens. I want to negotiate it when I can actually sell this to whoever I choose to, not because I have to, because I want to. The best time to take a loan from a bank is when you don't need that loan. Not when you're desperate for it, because then they'll give you a higher rate and a less friendly term. You know that.
I hear what you're saying. I just, there's a certain amount of corporatizing what the community is paying for, right? It's community tax dollars. And this council, I think, has been resolute. The year I was mayor, we definitely were resolute when we opened up the sports park that we didn't want any of our names on it. Previous councils have said that on a number of occasions. And the last thing that I would ever want is a council member's name on anything. But there might be some people in this town who've contributed significant amounts of time and energy, purely volunteering, never asking for even a pat on the back, to naming something after them would be much more rewarding than any dollar amount our city could ever receive. And so if we were ever going to consider naming something after someone, it should never be an appointed official or an elected official, but maybe someone who's contributed significantly to this community and never asked for a single thing from us. And I think that putting a corporate name on something is the complete opposite. It's an exchange of money for their having the name on something. It's not about the service to the community or anything like that. It's purely a financial transaction. And, I just, since we haven't talked about it at all, and this is the first time that I'm hearing about it.
All right, should we just
I'm
then,
not a fan.
how about if we, instead of trying to make a decision on it now, how about if we ask the staff to come back in the budget report and to cover that area, what are some of the pluses and
I don't think they
minuses?
need to. I think that in prior councils, when Peter Herzog was mayor, I think this all discussion came up with naming or selling the rights to name the different the playing fields of the new sports park. I think that to do that, it diminishes what the citizens of Lake Forest have committed to these parks and these fields. So I'm not really there right now.
I could have gone either way, but I thought Mr. Robinson Councilman Robinson was quite eloquent, and I think I'm swayed to that position. So is there anything that you want us to say, like my after-school program? I was the only one who mentioned it. Do you want more of us to opine on any of these items? Because we did take a few votes. It sounded like that one kind of died right there. Is there any?
No, we talked about that at the last meeting, and we asked them to come back in this budget and to change that. We did at the last meeting, the last budget meeting. Yes, I'm saying we
What was
already
it?
discussed it.
Which agenda? Which item? I'm not sure if I understand.
The after-school program.
Okay. Well, I didn't know. Do you want us to give more? Do you want more assent or consent to any other items?
Mr.
Mayor,
McGee is looking at
we're
you.
currently charging for the after-school program.
No, I'm saying a little bit more. Because
Oh, you want to charge an additional, because right now it's $25.
Yeah, and I think our cost was
Around 900 kids? So it's around
Yeah.
$22,000.
We're making like 5%, or I'm not saying making, but the revenue covers the expense.
Okay. So you're
5%
you're
of the
looking
ex-
to
of the
increase that fee from 25 to X.
If I remember what we talked about last year, and I think it might be helpful just to go through the minutes there, since that's what we're talking about is, hey, last year I think we talked about this. The way I remember it was that for those that couldn't afford to pay for it in some way, we didn't want to burden them any more than they already are, right? But there might be some folks out there that could afford to pay for it but are only paying the $25 a semester. And if I recall correctly, it went from $25 a year to $25 a semester, so it went up slightly. But it was just more of like a means test. And I don't know that I'm remembering it 100% correctly, but that's just the recollection I have. So.
Yeah, it's not for everyone, the increase necessarily. It needs to be needs-based, was my humble recollection.
Mr. Members of the council, I think your question is whether or not there would be, the staff would be seeking greater, I guess, consent by the council, a consensus. I think that would be appropriate if you're looking for us to spend time analyzing the costs associated with that specific program and recommending an additional amount, and bring that back at the budget adoption period for you, then it might be, you don't need necessarily take a vote. As long as there's at least 3 of you who's wanting to do that, then we can go forward.
I'll say yes.
I'm fine with it, as long as it's not going to be made. Do you have any idea of just roughly how much time you're going to put into it? I mean, I don't want you to, I'm going to have to put in 100 hours to try to figure this out.
No, I don't think it's going to take much time.
Okay, then I'm supportive.
Okay. We got 3 then. Is there anything else that anyone wants to seek consensus on, or that they've just mentioned and didn't get consensus? All right. With that, I think we go to. That's it, Al. That's all I see. Adjournment, right?
Yeah, return.
All right.